you so much, Rebecca. Hello, everyone, and welcome. So this year, Silicon Valley Reads 2022 is really proud to present this series of programs around that wonderful theme of the power of kindness, resilience, and hope. So our teen title this year is Darius the Great is Not Okay. So the New York Times stated that Khorram writes tenderly and humorously about his protagonist's journey of self-acceptance, making it hard not to want to reach through the pages, squeeze his hand, and reassure Darius that he is, in fact, going to be okay. We are really excited this afternoon to welcome the book's author, Adib Khorram. He has won the William C. Morris Debut Award, the Asian Pacific American Award for Young Adult Literature, a Boston Globe Hornbook honor, as well as multitude of other honors and accolades. When he isn't writing, you can find him learning how to do a Let's Jump, practicing his handstands, or steeping a cup of oolong. I think he's got some now. I'm really excited to be able to be here with you, and thank you for joining us today, Adib. He lives in Kansas City, Missouri, so please join me in welcoming him here.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here. This actually isn't oolong. It's just hot water with honey and lemon in it. I'm recovering from COVID right now. So if things get dicey at any point, that's why. Thankfully, it was very mild. I'm vaccinated and boosted, and it's just been like a little miserable, but not life-threatening. Yay, science. Oh, wait. I told you it was going to get dicey, and I've already gotten off track that I forgot I was actually supposed to talk about my book. So Darius the Great is Not Okay. For those who aren't familiar with it, it tells the story of a teenage Iranian American named Darius Kellner. He is nerdy, depressed, overweight, and lonely in his home of Portland, Oregon, and doesn't really have any friends. He's kind of a loner, but his sense of self is transformed when he and his family take a trip to Iran. It's his first time visiting Iran. It's his first time getting to meet the part of his family that lives there. And it's his first time making a true friend who he makes in his grandparents' neighbor, a boy named Sohrab. It's, I think, pretty fun and funny, and it's full of lots of tea and Star Trek and Iranian food because I'm a very food-driven creature. And it explores, I'm told, a lot of themes. I think, like, if there are any English teachers in the audience, I just want to let you all know that I think theme is a wonderful, beautiful thing, and I don't know what the themes are until after the book is already done. But I really wanted to explore my own experiences as a member of the Iranian diaspora, as a queer teenager, and as someone that has lived with depression, major depressive disorder, most of my life, in a way that I hope humanizes those experiences rather than catastrophizing them, for lack of a better word. I've written several other books. I did write a sequel called Darius the Great Deserves Better, about Darius's life back home in Portland after he returns from Iran, as he navigates his first relationship, new friendships at school, confusing feelings, and figuring out what he wants out of life. Because I love all things Iranian, I also wrote a picture book for very young readers called 7 Special Somethings, a Nowruz story about the Iranian celebration of Nowruz, which is the New Year celebration every spring equinox, which is like 18 days away. So get your haftscenes ready, get your stomachs ready for some good food. It's going to be great. And I also wrote Kiss and Tell, which is about a gay boy in a boy band, and that comes out on March 22nd, the day after Nowruz. And so it's, on the one hand, like I'm getting a Nowruz present, but on the other hand, it's like I'm giving the Nowruz present to the world. So that worked out really well. I think that's it. I think that's my kind of introduction, and I really just want to turn it over to our teen interviewers to get this show on the road, because I want you all to have a good time. So we'll bring Lena and Trisha on. Is that okay? Did I do my part right? You can tell me if I messed up. I have a thick skin.
Yeah, thank you so much for that introduction. I'm Trisha. I'm currently a sophomore in high school, and I will be moderating this panel with Lena.
Hi, as she said, I'm Lena. I'm a junior in high school, and we're both so stoked to be here. Yeah, I think we can just get into it.
Yeah. Okay, so our first question for you is just describe your journey to becoming a writer. So what did you do before pursuing writing? And have you seen any skills transfer over from your other experiences into writing?
Oh, that's such a good question. I actually had no inkling that I wanted to be a writer growing up. I had no idea that people like me could be writers because when I was growing up, everything we read was by dead, straight, rich white men. And as I was none of those things, I guess I am a man, but I wasn't dead and I wasn't rich and I wasn't straight and I wasn't white. And so I just didn't think that I was allowed to be in books or write books. So like many baby queer kids did, I joined the theater. I got my degree in theatrical lighting design and found myself in a job here in Kansas City working in event production. So doing lighting and video and audio for corporate events and concerts, performing arts things. And I was very content with that. And I was actually pretty good at it. But that job ended up having a lot of downtime and a lot of like hurry up and wait for your clients to email you. So I kind of just started writing for pleasure. And over the course of several years of writing for pleasure, I started taking it more seriously and wondering if I could possibly get a book published. And it turns out, after a lot of really bad books, I finally wrote one that wasn't bad and got it published. And that was over like the course of 8 years. And yeah, I think in a weird way, or maybe it's not that weird, studying theater was great preparation for being a writer because theater is really the study of humanity and learning about character, learning about story structure, learning to listen and observe are all really useful things for a writer. Also, like on the business end of things, learning to deal with personalities, you do that a lot in theater, and there are a lot of personalities in publishing as well. So that was great preparation. Also, like my day job, it wasn't all like the Kansas City Symphony. Sometimes it was like random financial institutions that we did stuff for. And being exposed to a lot of corporate America definitely steeled my soul in a way that I think has really prepared me for life and taught me to value what's truly important, the kind of connections that we make with other people, and to not let other people's problems become my problems. Sorry, that was really rambling. I hope that made some modicum of sense.
That was perfect. And kind of going off of that. So I did some stalking of you on YouTube earlier, and I found out you kind of were talking about like the beginning of like your writing career, I guess, and how a lot of the first characters you wrote they were like white or straight, very, very typical quintessential characters. So where did you get the first seedling of an idea to write someone like Darius and Darius the Great is not okay?
Darius actually came to me while I was visiting my family to celebrate Nowruz. So my dad's Iranian, my mom is white, like Missouri American. And most of my dad's family left Iran after the revolution, became refugees, and eventually settled in Vancouver, British Columbia. And in the before times, I visited them once or twice a year. And so back in 2015, I was visiting them for Nowruz. Had just finished a different book, but was like ready to start on something new. And yeah, up until then, I had been writing entirely about straight white people, but finding out that like everyone else was writing the same stories. And so I said, what's the story that only I could possibly tell? And I was like, oh my God, why don't I try writing about an Iranian American that likes tea and Star Trek? Because I like those things. And I didn't actually expect it to go anywhere, but it was around 2015. I think it was a little before 2015, in late 2014, that the We Need Diverse Books movement got started and was gaining steam. And so as I worked on Darius, there was also this reckoning in children's publishing about the need for diversity. And so I was like, oh, maybe this book does stand a chance after all. Sorry, did I answer the question? I feel like I rambled again. Okay, good.
You're good. Once you got that kernel of an idea, how long did it take for you to get the first draft of Darius the Great is Not Okay? And what was the biggest challenge of drafting?
The first draft took me, I think, about 5 months. I started it in March and I wrote the end in like August, which I think that makes 5 months. It's so weird. I don't remember what the challenges were of it. I'm sure there were some, but overall it was a very joyful drafting experience. I really just I drafted it in a very selfish manner in that I was just like, if I want the thing to be in it, I'm going to put the thing in it, which is why there's a bunch of T in Star Trek. I really let my joy lead me in a lot of ways. And so yeah, I would say challenging was, stories do have to have a plot and they do have to have conflict. And I am kind of a conflict averse person. And so it was challenging at times just to like have people be mean to each other. Like to write scenes where people argue or hurt each other. So that was challenging, yeah.
And so more on writing, I want to know who your favorite character is and why, and maybe also who your favorite character was to write. So yeah.
Oh, I think my favorite character both to write. Actually, no. My favorite character is Mamu, Darius's grandmother, because she definitely borrowed a lot from my aunt, my dad's sister, who is one of the most loving people in the world. And so it was really fun to kind of make a fictionalized version of her, as someone who could give Darius so much love. I think my favorite character to write ended up being Darius's dad, which is kind of weird. But as I was writing, I like did math to figure out how old the characters were, and I realized that I was like older than Darius. Like I was closer to being Darius's dad than I was to being Darius, and I had to like lay on the ground for a while because I was very distressed at like the passage of time. But it really got me thinking about like, I don't have any kids, but like what I would do if I had kids and what kind of world I want to like be making for the people that are younger than me. And so I ended up really connecting with Darius's dad in a way. And so I think he was my favorite character to write because he makes so many mistakes, but he loves his son very fiercely and wants to do better and just keeps sticking his foot in his mouth. But I do think he and Darius come to a better place by the end. Spoiler alert, I guess. And the book is 3 years old now, so spoilers is a little loosey-goosey now.
Yeah. Was it, did you find it easier or more difficult to write a character based a lot on yourself?
I think I found it easy because I deliberately made choices to distance myself from Darius. I gave him a family structure that was different from mine. I gave him a childhood that was different from mine in a lot of ways. He and I do share, our Iranianness and our queerness and our living with depression. But like growing up, I had lots of friends, whereas Darius had very few. Even just, our parents, my dad is Iranian, whereas Darius's mom is Iranian. He grew up in a place different from mine, from where I grew up. And so I think I knew very early on that I didn't want to write fan fiction of my own life. And so very often I made choices to make Darius different from me, and that made it easy to write him. I hope that makes sense.
Everything you're saying is making lots of sense. No worries.
Okay.
So how did you like land on Darius's name? Because obviously that reflects Darius the Great, the actual, historical figure. And then I guess piggybacking off of that, how did you choose all the characters' names? And if any of the other characters have a name significance?
Yeah. So Darius's name was actually one of the first things that came to me. I've always liked the name Darius. I just think it sounds nice. But also very quickly the idea of someone who is named after Darius the Great and felt completely inadequate in every way was very compelling, seed of a story to me. And so that was probably the first thing I knew about. Well, not the first. The first thing I knew about Darius was that he was going to be Iranian, but maybe the second or third thing I knew was that he was going to be named Darius. As far as other characters, Darius's dad is named Stephen after my favorite tea shop in Portland, Oregon, Stephen Smith Tea Maker. His mom actually went through a couple different name changes before we landed on Shireen, which I just like the sound of. Lale, Darius's sister, is actually named after my favorite Persian bakery in Vancouver. one of Darius's school bullies is named after one of my school bullies, but I'm not going to say which one. It was Trent Bolger. So yeah, sometimes I named characters after like people that I liked. Like Darius's school friend Javane Esfahani, the only other Iranian in school. It's actually named after a Javane that I knew in school who was the only other Iranian in my high school. A fact which she is very proud about. She reached out to me on Facebook, which I almost never use, but I had a message one day where she's like, I'm pretty sure Adib named this character after me. And I was like, you were correct, I did. So yeah, I actually like keep a note on my notes app on my phone of where I'm constantly writing down names that I like. And so I often will go back and look through that document and be like, that's a good name. I'm gonna use that. Sometimes I look up what the name means, but sometimes I don't, because I feel like sometimes a name meaning doesn't like fit the vibe of what the name sounds like. I think that's one of the weird things about language. Weird and beautiful.
I really enjoyed reading about Lale and all of her antics, and also Mamu, just like the descriptions of how her cooking is legendary to all of her neighbors. I really appreciated how you fleshed out all of your side characters. Like, how did you do that and manage to give them all their own mini storylines?
That's something that really only happened as I revised the book. And I rewrote the book like 6 times on my own, and then 2 more times with my agent, and then 4 more times with my editor after we had sold it to Penguin. Part of it came from kind of my own just digging deeper, trying to find more truth in the story. And part of it was people kept asking me good questions about like, what does this character think? What does this character want? And the famous children's author Sharon Draper, I heard her give a talk once where she said, as writers, we're not writing characters, we're writing people. And that has always stuck with me, that even though I, as an artist, am creating them, that they have the most resonance and truth when I create them as whole people with their own wants and needs and desires, rather than tools to move a story along. But I think that's something that I, as a writer, only discover in revision, because I can't hold like all these people in my head at the same time. I have to like sort out Darius before I can sort out his dad, before I can sort out his sister and his grandparents. And like, it sort of trickles down. As Darius becomes more human, everyone else gets to become more human too.
I love that. And also in the story, I think mental health is a huge theme, not just with Darius, but also we see how every character really grows. But knowing that like mental health experiences are different for everyone, how did you go about approaching Darius's own struggle with mental health, and also how mental health was approached in the book by other characters?
Most of it really was drawn from my own experience of living with depression. I was very fortunate in that, well, fortunate is a weird way of putting it, but my family has a history of mental illness. And so my parents kind of knew to get me help and didn't really stigmatize it. At the same time, kind of more broadly, in my family, not everyone got it. I don't think anyone was ever like mean about it, but not everyone got it. And Iranians definitely have a different view of mental health. And I think diaspora communities in general have different views of mental health, partially as like a necessity for survival. And so most of it was really drawing from my own experiences. At the same time, I also knew early on that I wanted to write about living with depression. And the keyword there was living, because, as I was writing in 2015, I felt like we had just seen a whole bunch of books that came out in like 2013 and 2014 that kind of romanticized mental illness or suicide. And I thought it was really gross, and it made me angry. because, I have lost people to suicide before, and it didn't feel romantic. It just felt terrible. And so I wanted to write a book that was more honest to my own life. And the fact that the vast majority of people that live with depression or other mental illnesses, they are not defined by it, and it's not like a crisis for them. It's just like having, allergies. Yeah, sorry. I hope that didn't get too dark.
No worries at all. What I want to know now is like what choices you made when you were writing about Darius as an Iranian American, because he experiences these two very different cultures in the United States and then in Iran. It's almost like two different worlds. So, how did you approach describing a non-Western culture to an audience that would be predominantly Western? And what was like the most difficult choices that you had to make?
Oh, I've never been asked that before. I think I went into it knowing that I wanted to show Iran as a true and beautiful and vibrant place that I have always longed to see, and probably will never get to, because of the complexities of relations between Iran and the United States. But writing someone going there was a way of taking myself on that trip. And I made I don't know if it's a choice. I guess it's a choice, but I tried to see it through Darius's eyes, and that as a teenager who grew up in America, there would be things that were strange and wonderful to him, and there would also be things that were mundane and everyday to him. Even if the average reader wouldn't get it, Darius got it. And so I tried to always honor what was familiar to Darius was familiar in the text and didn't get remarked on very much. And what was new to Darius was made new in the text, and he did remark on it and think about it and explain it. Because in a way, as he was explaining it to himself, he was also explaining it to the reader. And so it was a challenge finding that balance, and that's something that really also happened a lot in revisions, especially with my editor. Her name is Dana, and she's actually Lebanese American, and was keen on diaspora stories and had her own experiences visiting Lebanon and having family there. And so we talked a lot about which things to highlight, which things not to. So yeah, it was a constant act of honing. But I think I'm really happy with where we landed.
I can just say, as a reader, like reading that was a very transformative experience. Like you really felt like you were there with him. So I think you very much succeeded in that.
Thank you.
So a lot of the themes, including mental health, like we talked about earlier, as you were saying, mental health can be like it's non-glamorous, can be very serious, and it could be put through a more general adult fiction lens. So why did you decide, or was it a decision to write in the YA, quote unquote YA genre? Yeah. I
think most of the things I've written have been YA. I think I gravitate toward that. First of all, because I feel like my teenage years were very fraught, and it's a great place to mine for traumas. But I think more broadly, I read a lot, if you don't count 2020, where I did not read very much at all because we were all going through trauma. Still are, but I can read again. So many adult books were so boring to me. I think there was actually one year where I read 3 different books about like sad sack white men getting divorces and developing celiac disease. And like that was it. That's all that happened. They were like 40-something men. They did crappy things, got divorced, and then couldn't eat bread anymore. And I was like, this is boring. And yet people are like praising all this like literature. And I was like, I think maybe because I came from the theater, I want stories to make me feel things. In some ways, I want my stories to be larger than life. And so young adult fiction was so exciting. It was about big feelings. It was about new things. Young adult fiction was a much easier place to find voices that weren't all like straight white men. And also, like, teenagers are very interesting. I don't know if you know this about yourself, but you're interesting. And I'm fascinated to like know what's going on in your head. When you're a teenager, when you're young, the world is still squishy and still ready to be molded. And I feel like the older I get, the more the world calcifies. And writing for teens helps me be more hopeful about the future. Because I'm like, oh, that's right. We can still like change the world and make it better and kinder. I hope that wasn't super maudlin. Anyway, all of which to say, don't go read boring books by old white men getting divorces. Read interesting young adult books instead.
That was a nice way to put it. I agree that I'm very interesting.
Wow, I'm glad you see that.
Yeah, and I really like what you said about how just like teenagers are still figuring things out, and some things are so new to us, and we're going through a lot as well. So, in your writing, why do you feel that it's important to portray young adults working through problems like living with their mental health issues?
I don't know that I think about it so much in terms of like being important as I do that I think it's honest. And in addition to being very interesting, teenagers are also like the best lie detectors in the world. I feel like you always know when adults aren't being truthful with you, when they're hiding things from you, when they're coddling you. Certainly I don't know how much you've been following the news out of a number of states about like challenges and bannings to books that explore not just heavy topics, but also just like queer lives, Black and brown lives, and adults saying that, we can't let our kids be made uncomfortable. An argument could be made that the discomfort of a white person is less important than the dignity and the life of a brown person, but that's anyway. So yeah, these adults are spewing all this BS. Am I allowed to say that? It's too late now. BS. And I think teenagers know that it's disingenuous. They know that it's selfish. And so I just always try to strive for honesty in my work as best I can. I hope that, sorry, I ran off on a big tangent there, didn't I? I did warn you about the COVID brain.
Oh, not at all, not at all. And kind of, I guess, going off of that a little bit too. So, you're being a writer, you've obviously influenced enough of us for us all to be here and, reading all your books, and they're just all so amazing. But I want to know who your major influences are, both as an author and maybe a person you also look up to just in life.
Yeah. This is going to sound sappy, and it also may come as no surprise to anyone that's read the book. But like my number one like inspiration in life is a fictional character. It is Jean-Luc Picard, who is like the foundation of my entire moral self. Watching Star Trek: The Next Generation, as I was growing up, gave me a very particular worldview and set of morals. And so yeah, I always try to live my life as I think Jean-Luc Picard would want me to live my life. When it comes to, integrity and honesty and doing the right thing, not being afraid to challenge injustice, and not being closed to new experiences. I say that even though I also am a really picky eater. And as far as, sorry, as far as writing, there's so many amazing writers working today. I think Jacqueline Woodson is just, a titan. Jandy Nelson, the first time I read a Jandy Nelson book, I just walked away transformed. I think there's amazing queer writers out there like Tessa Gratton, who just blows me away with the things that she can do with words. Oh, goodness. Yeah. I think those are some of the big ones for me right now. I feel like it also changes. Like every year there's amazing new books coming out. Like there's one that comes out later this year that I got to read early called Beating Heart Baby by Leo Min. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this person can write so much better than me. I need to study this book and learn and steal their tricks. So yeah, it's constant inspiration.
Do you have any advice for teenage authors that are just trying to start out?
Cool. This is going to be weird because one piece of advice is to ignore all advice. Because what works for one person doesn't work for everyone. There's some people that say you have to write every day. I can't write every day. I like having the weekends off, and I find it actually, I write better if I don't write every day. There are some people that say you have to outline. I never outline, but some people need an outline. So I really, instead, I don't advise, but I advocate trying lots of different things, lots of different ways of writing. Try writing by hand, try typing, try writing like at a desk, try writing in your bed, try writing out and about if you're able to do that. It used to be a lot easier to like go to a coffee shop. Try writing contemporary, try writing fantasy, try writing with an outline, try writing without one. Just try lots of things and see what feels right to you. All that being said, also, I think one of the best like craft tricks I ever learned was I was given the advice to pick a book I really love and admire and like type the whole thing out myself. Like look at the book and then type it into its own document on my computer. Not to copy it, though you are making a copy of it, but to absorb what it felt like to write that book. What it felt like to make those sentences, what it feels like to sit and write a book. Like there's a muscle memory involved in just sitting and writing an entire book. But also like writing, like copying it out as opposed to just reading it, really like opens your mind to how it was built. And so that was really good. And then as far as like, so that's like my best craft advice. And my best like personal advice is for writing, but also just for all art, is the sooner that you can learn that your self-worth does not come from your art, the healthier you're going to be. Because you are a full and complete human being, worthy of love and respect at all times. Whether or not you're producing any art, whether or not you're writing or not, you're still awesome. And so many writers, including myself at times, get like really wrapped up in, oh, if my book isn't good, then I am not a good person. And that is not true. And it's really important to learn that. So those are my 3 pieces of advice. Don't take advice, copy out a book, and know that you're awesome, even if you don't write.
I think that is some of the best advice I've heard. I've never heard the writing or copying out a book before, and it makes a lot of sense.
I just felt like I leveled up.
Yeah,
I did it.
honestly, I'll give it a try. So I think this will be like our last general question, and it's tell us about your new book and what perspective you're hoping to share with the readers.
Sorry, can you repeat the last part of that?
What new perspectives you're hoping to share with your readers?
Ooh, okay. Yeah, so Kiss and Tell comes out March 22nd. Sorry. It's about Hunter Drake, who's the only gay member of a hit Canadian boy band. And he just went through a messy breakup with his first boyfriend, right as he's going on like a big arena tour of North America. And shortly thereafter, his ex-boyfriend leaks all of their intimate text messages because he's really mad about the breakup. And so suddenly Hunter has to grapple with like the damage to his public image, the pressures of being queer in the public eye, maybe falling for the drummer in their opening band, who's basically like Iranian Nick Jonas. He's the youngest brother in a three-brother Iranian American pop band. And juggling how to be himself and do what he wants to do in the world while there's all these people pulling him apart. it's full of, in addition to like Hunter's story, it also has interstitials with like fake BuzzFeed quizzes and like gossip tweets, think pieces, all kinds of stuff, as a way of kind of, I hope, examining the way that we as a media society consume the identity of celebrities, especially young people, especially marginalized people. We just treat someone's humanity as entertainment or as a product. And so that's what I was thinking about. But also I was just thinking about boy bands and being gay, because boy bands are fun. But also I did write it during the pandemic, and so it was really hard at times. And so sometimes when I talk about it, I just go back to that pandemic self that was alone and sad and writing about a boy band, which is fun. So yeah, that's Kiss and Tell. What was the other part of the question?
I think
Did I answer all the parts?
I think you answered it. Yeah. Just
Okay.
honestly, I'm very excited. I'm sure we all are. And I think Rebecca's going to take us into the next part of this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I cannot wait to read this book. It sounds so fun. It's going to be wonderful. We do have a couple of audience questions, and then we're going to do a bonus lightning round, quick fun questions. Yeah, right at the end, and then we'll wrap up. So we have 2 questions. This is from Michael. Hope I pronounced that right. Would the author like to talk about his own relationship to tea and maybe some of his own teen jobs?
Ooh, yeah. So tea is obviously very important in Iranian culture. It's a like fundamental aspect of hospitality in Iranian culture. Also for me, tea is very connected with my love of Captain Picard, who's famous for ordering tea Earl Grey hot. I came to kind of know and love tea more as I had a friend who lives in Seattle, who also loved tea. She studied abroad in England for a semester and came back loving tea even more than she already had. And we just got to like drinking a lot of tea and trying new teas and going to tea festivals. And really the tea festivals in particular kind of opened my mind to the wide world of tea and how like expansive it is and how intertwined it is with human history and with the history of colonialism and exploitation and imperialism it is, but also how like unique tea is as an expression of the place that it comes from, which was super fascinating to me. As far as teen jobs, my first job was at an usher at a theater here in Kansas City. My second job was designing web pages for my school district after I graduated. My third job was working at a costume shop because I worked for one day at the scene shop and turns out I'm terrible at building things. And they're like, well, can you sew a straight line? And I was like, mostly I am gay. So on the one hand, maybe good at sewing. On the other hand, straight. So that was a good job for me. And then there was a terrible recession right after I graduated college. And so that sucked.
Wonderful. And our second audience question, also from Michael, is the author mentioned that it's unlikely that he will be able to travel to Iran. When did the book take place? Was it realistic for Darius and his family to visit Iran at that time?
So I don't think the book specifies a year, but unofficially I always figured it took place around 2017 or 2018, maybe in an alternate universe where the orange one was never the president. It is fraught for Iranian Americans to go back and visit. And a lot depends on who they are, how they came to the United States, what's going on with their family back there, if they still have any. It's quite realistic and possible for Darius to be able to visit. They probably would have needed more planning time than they actually did. And they might have had a little bit more restriction on what they could go and do than they did, but it's quite possible. People go and visit Iran all the time. It's complicated for me since my family is Baha'i to go back. Also, as like an out queer person, it can be dangerous. Also, my dad is Iranian, whereas Darius's mother was Iranian. And if your dad's Iranian and like you're a boy, they might be like, well, why haven't you done like your compulsory military service since, you know, your dad was Iranian? That makes you Iranian. it's very rare, but they can harass Americans if they feel like it. And they don't usually. The chances are very low, but it's a non-zero chance. And it just, when the nuclear deal happened back in 2014, 2015, I was like, oh, maybe I'll get to visit Iran in my lifetime, because it felt like relations were going to normalize a little bit. But then again, the orange one came along and tore up the deal. And now Iranians know that Americans are a bunch of liars who won't keep their word. And so things are, I think, a little worse than they were before. But yeah, maybe someday. We'll see. That was really long and rambly also. Sorry. I'm still really mad about the orange one tearing up the nuclear deal.
I understand. And honestly, I love your long, rambly answers.
Thank you.
It's been such a pleasure so far. Yeah. So now we're going to do our lightning round questions. Take it away, guys.
We're going to start out with the obvious one. What's your favorite tea if you had to pick one?
Oh, it does change depending on like what I've had recently. But right now I'm really loving Phoenix Mountain Oolong.
So I see a guitar behind you. So
Yeah.
Do you play any musical instruments?
I do. I play the guitar. I have a Fender Stratocaster, and I also have a Fender Champion lap steel guitar, which is the one that's on like the yellow one that's on a stand there. It's a slide guitar. I don't know that I play well, but I don't play awful either.
Do you think that Darius would like bubble tea?
I don't. I think he would like the idea of it, and I think he would find the texture of tapioca pearls a little bit like jarring. Just because like you're drinking and then suddenly there's something in your mouth and it's alarming. And I say that because I like the idea of boba tea, but also I hate boba. Like it's too squishy for me. So I may be passing that off to Darius. But I think he also respects it and loves that other people love it.
How many languages do you speak? Or yeah.
Fluently, only English. However, I today, in fact, passed my 1,000 day streak on Duolingo. Pandemic willing, I'm visiting Italy this year, and so I've been learning Italy for the last 6 months. Italian. I've been learning Italian for the last 6 months. Before that, I was studying Portuguese and German. German because I learned it in high school and try to like refresh it every so often, and Portuguese because I visited Portugal back in 2017 and wanted to be able to read the menus at the restaurants. So I can only speak English, but I can read ish German, Portuguese, and Italian.
All right. Favorite Star Trek characters? Like, who do you like the best? Who do you identify with the most?
Ooh, I mean, obviously Captain Picard. Growing up, I had a crush on Wesley Crusher, but I didn't realize what was happening because I was, very young and naive and didn't realize what like, oh, that means you're gay. Like it didn't even occur to me. But I also like loved that he got to like be a kid on the Enterprise. I always wanted that for myself. I really love Garrick from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I love how morally ambiguous he is and delightful and charming he is. I love every single person on Star Trek Discovery, especially the gays. Like I'm so glad they're finally winning. I also really love everyone on Lower Decks. They're all delightful and neurotic and fun. I have too many favorites. That's the problem.
Maybe we should have just asked you who you didn't like.
Oh. Tom Paris from Voyager. I felt he was boring.
All right. Do you have any pets?
I do not. I live in an apartment and I really want a dog, but I feel like dogs deserve backyards. So I'm waiting till I can like get a house and then I'll get a dog.
That's the same answer for me. I also live in an apartment. I'd love a dog, but they do deserve backyards.
I just want them to be able to run around. But yes, I love dogs. They make me happy. I love visiting people who have dogs so that I can pet their dogs and then go home if the dog poops on the rug and I don't have to deal with it.
That's so nice. Okay, well, we are wrapping up right now. as a reminder, if anyone is interested in submitting their email in order to win signed copies of Darius the Great is Not Okay and Deserves Better, please put it in the Q&A, or if you're not comfortable putting your email in the Q&A, feel free to just email me directly. I'm the person who gave you your Zoom link. Just thank you so much. This was an incredible program. Adib, thank you for your time. Lena, Trisha, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for hosting me. It was a pleasure to come and talk with your community. And Lena and Trisha, thank you for all your great questions. I thoroughly loved getting to talk with you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.